Welcome to Channel 24. Michael Sheitelman, political analyst, is joining me now, and it's me, Nataliia Lutsenko. Michael, welcome and welcome to every our viewer.
Good evening, Natalia. Glad to see you.
Michael, let me start with something interesting. Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov recently, once again, said that the spirit of Anchorage is fading away. And Russia still treats the agreements with the United States at the Anchorage summit as a starting point for peace talks about Ukraine. Why are Russian officials so obsessed with this idea of the Anchorage spirit, and what does it actually mean for Moscow?
First of all, we want to find any point of stability, any point to start from, really. Like they say that this is our starting point. But at the moment, they invented this starting point. This is not reality. This is just their fantasies. And the reality, all of us, we watched it on the meeting in Anchorage between President Trump and President Putin, that this meeting collapsed in the middle of this meeting. It was the plan for the big summit between Russia and United States. And a lot of Russian officials arrived with Mr. Putin. It was the Minister of Economy and Ministry of, I don't remember really, of Investment or something. And a lot of people really arrived, teams, and the same from American side. The Finance Ministry and Energy Ministry representatives, they were on this meeting. And they waited for the meetings of the first person of President Trump and President Putin. And at the end of this meeting was planned a common press conference of Putin and Trump. And afterwards, common lunch between two delegations with the discussion of economic questions and investment questions. But the meeting was, as I said, like exploded at the middle of this. And then the sides, they come to common press conference. By the way, 100 journalists from Russian Federation arrived on the special plane, separate plane from presidential, 100 journalists. And the press conference was canceled. But nobody announced that press conference is canceled. They started press conference. President Putin had a speech of 8 minutes. Afterwards, President Trump had a speech of 3 minutes, and he's gone from the scene, gone away. And just in 1 hour or something was announced that the meeting finished, that there was no lunch, no nothing. So obviously that sides on that summit became to be the meeting of two people and not the summit. And obviously it was let's say it was obvious that they have no result, that they have no common points, because in these short speeches they didn't bring any common points, any agreements, anything. So afterwards, Foreign Ministry of Russian Federation started to invent new reality, that there were some agreements, some, I don't know, compromises, etc., etc. But we never heard this from American side. President Trump never mentioned this meeting, in the future. It was this meeting happened more than half a year ago. And during half a year, when President Trump heard a lot of speeches about Putin, including Putin, but never mentioned this meeting. So he knows that this meeting was absolutely empty and senseless. But Russians, they need some point to start, and they try to start from this point. But, as you said, Mr. Lavrov, foreign minister, today said that this is fade out, yeah? Something like that.
Something like fading away or...
Fading away,
so disappearing, this kind of a fairy tale, yeah.
Yeah, so the fairy tale was invented by Lavrov and also disappeared by Lavrov, let's say.
I think that they are trying to confuse the world. It's nothing new that Moscow is trying to confuse the world, but they are trying to confuse the world that, listen, Washington has promised something to us in Anchorage, and they are not giving that to us. That's why we're going to sabotage the peace agreement. Could be.
Yes, exactly, yes. But also we should take into account the relationship inside Russian Federation, inside the Russian elites, and inside Kremlin. All of these fairy tales, this is fairy tales which were invented by Foreign Ministry, by Minister Lavrov, and it was not so supported by President Putin himself, by the way. It was supported by some other officials, but I don't remember if President Putin said about this spirit of Anchorage. Maybe once or zero times. Because Lavrov, he was in charge of this meeting in Anchorage. He was in charge of this. He's responsible for this not successful summit, and this is his responsibility. And he tells these fairy tales not only to Americans, not only to international public, but also to Mr. Putin himself. He says that, no, 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 Mr. Putin, Mr. President, you did not understand. We agreed with Americans. It was successful. So this is also part of inter-Kremlin discussion, I believe.
Michael, and you mentioned a very good point that the 100 so-called journalists arrived on the separate plane to Anchorage. And I haven't seen with any other politicians, and you remember Biden was coming to Kyiv. I don't remember he had like 100 American journalists arriving to Ukraine. Well, they do have some journalists working here and based here in Ukraine and Kyiv, but still, and I do remember when it was 2022 and I was at the United Nations Foreign Correspondent Association in New York, and Lavrov back then arrived to New York. There was a long discussion whether he can go or not. And he arrived, and I remember I went to the press conference room. I've been there for a month or so by that moment. And I remember a lot of Russian propagandists were just fitted the room, and I've heard only a Russian language behind me. And I was like, where did they come from? I remember there was a CNBS, BBC, Associated Press journalism, Voice of America journalists, but then I was like, and maybe 30 or 40 Russian propagandists. And I was like, wow, that's a supporting group of people coming to support Lavrov.
There is a reason for that, you know. When we are speaking about United States of America, let's count how many state-owned news outlets exists in the United States. You know, zero state-owned news outlets. It is banned by the law to have state-owned news outlets. In, let's say, United Kingdom, we have one society-owned news outlet, BBC, society, not the state, but zero state-owned. Zero.
Michael, but what about Voice of America and Radio Liberty? I thought
okay,
they
don't work inside United States. They're working outside of United States, not the yeah. So inside United States, they have zero, and then somebody from journalists they come with president, let's say with President Obama or President Bush to another country, so the media they pay for it. They pay for this visit for this journalist. And this is a business reason to send this correspondent and not to send this correspondent. And big news outlets like, again, CNN, ABC, or Washington Post, they could afford to send correspondent, but we could count some, let's say, 20 person who could send this correspondent. In Russian Federation, 90% of news outlets, they all state-owned, formally state-owned, or informally state-owned. When I mean informally, it means that from formal point of view, for example, it is owned by Mrs. Kabayeva, who is non-official wife of President Putin. So it is de facto state-owned media, or by some of his friends of his childhood. So 90% of media state-owned. So de facto, all of these correspondents, they have one employer, which is Russian state. And for each of them, Russian state pays for this visit, and they come as a part of their work for Russian Federation. They don't work for news, they don't work for public, they work for Russian government de facto.
Michael, today I was inspired by social media posts by Ukrainian analysts and professor. And so the question is, a few years ago, the topic of the decolonization of Russia was very widely discussed in political and academic circles. But now, this conversation has almost disappeared from the international information space, from the Ukrainian space, I would say. Why did the decolonization debate also fading away?
Not such a fading away. It faded away from the public opinion, yes, because in 2022, 2023, they believed in the coming victory of this war, and after the victory, you should to reorganize Russian Federation, like it was with Nazi Germany, in German Empire, not German Empire after World War One, and with Nazi Germany after War Two, and with Japan, for example, to reorganize Japan. So our dream was to reorganize Russian Empire to separate states, etc. And now we don't believe, most of us don't believe in such a global and total victory, let's say. We still believe in our victory, but not so total. But, yes, it did. So this is the reason why it disappeared from the public discussions. But, interesting point, it became to be official policy of European Union now. In the European Union, there is such a organization as Parliamentary Assembly of I don't remember exact name of this, PASSE. This is the Assembly of European Parliament, something like that. And this is a official organization which is represented by parliament members from different European countries, also from Ukraine. And last month, it happened in January, in this organization was formed a Russian opposition platform. Before a full-scale war between Russia and Ukraine, Russia also was a member of this organization. And Russian parliament member, they had the seats in this organization. This is official organization of European Union. But now Russia represented not by state officials of Russian Federation, but by the opposition leaders. For example, Garry Kasparov, who is world champion in chess, and for example, Mrs. Tolokonnikova, she is the musician from Pussy Riot, also very famous musical anti-Putin group. She spent a couple of years in Russian jail, and she was one of she played a role in this series of Netflix House of Cards. So she's also very, very famous. And now, when this official, again, I say that again, that this is official organization of European Union, they represented by 15 opposition leaders of Russian Federation. 10 of them represent some different organizations of Russian opposition, but 5 of them represent different small nations of Russian Federation. So that means they represent, for example, Chuvashi or Mordva or another nations in Russia. And it was the decision of European Union that Russian opposition will be built by this way. So it means that European Union has a dialogue not only with Russian opposition, but also with representatives of small nations inside Russia. And what is that if not re-imperialistic or something like that? So this direct dialogue between the European Union and different nations who were colonized by Russian Federation No, by Russian Empire, yeah. I believe this is the first step for decolonization of Russian Empire.
Is it correct to say that Russian Federation could potentially collapse how the Soviet Union actually collapsed? And what were the key signs and, I don't know, just what processes led to the breakup of the Soviet Union?
The most predictable scenario is collapse of Russian Federation. We can't say when it will happen, but obviously in Russian Federation there are a lot of nations who wants to have their own states and who could organize their own states, and these states will be stable, will be, let's say, they could have their own economy, like Yakutia, for example. The country, the Yakutia will be the biggest country in Europe if if they proclaim their independence. Yakutia, it is its territory. It's like European Union territory, and it has the population of couple of million. I don't remember exactly, but the GDP will be also the like GDP of European Union if they increase their independence, because they have a gold deposits, they have oil deposits, etc., etc. So a lot of nations in Russian Federation, they want independence, but under this suppression of communists first, and now under suppression of this Putin regime, they just can't do that. And at the beginning of Russian independence, I mean in 90s of first of 20th century, Chechnya, for example, wanted independence, and Tatarstan wanted independence, and they proclaimed some independence, by the way. Tatarstan in 1991, then different republics of post-Soviet states proclaimed their independence, like Ukraine or Moldova. So also Tatarstan proclaimed independence, but they are still part of Russian Federation. But they part of Russian Federation till the next war, I believe.
Well, and another important question for Ukrainians, to be honest. Is there anything Ukraine or Ukrainian society can realistically do to contribute to the weakening or fragmentation of the Russian Federation?
Only what our soldiers make on the front line, not more than that. No, really not more than that, because these processes, they're their own processes of these nations. And we could see then you follow the culture of these small nations. When we say small, this is not such a small nations. This is millions of people, millions of Tatars, millions of Yakut people, and they have also small nations like Chukotka, for example, has only 50,000 population. But part of these nations, there are millions of people, and they have their own language, they have their own culture, and they have their own traditions. For example, the Baikal Lake, they have a Buryat nation, and in Buryat nation they have their own religion, their own language, own religion, and their own celebrations, festivals, etc. So they are ready de facto to be the state. Like Mongolia is the independent state. And on the border of Mongolia exists this Buryatia, which also could be independent state if revolutionary situation for that. So this is realistic. This is realistic. But as always, it happens. Then nations they become free out of colonization. Then the empire is weak. Yeah, like when British Empire was weak after the World War II. So a lot of nations proclaimed and gained their independence from British Empire in Africa or in Asia. So the same could happen with Russian suppressed nations when Russian Empire will be weak. Will be weak. That's it.
But many analysts say that Western governments, they are actually afraid of Russia collapsing. Why is the West so cautious? And still they're cautious, Michael, about the idea of a Russian breakup. What risks do they see except I don't know, using nuclear weapon?
No, the same was with Soviet Union.
Okay.
Absolutely the same situation.
Hmm.
And as you remember, President of United States asked Ukraine not to proclaim its independence, but it happened anyway. You just can't rule that. You can't. You can influence, but not so heavily influence on these nations. If at the moment the nation wants its independence, it gained independence, and. I was the witness of that, for example, in Lithuania. Lithuania in 1990 and 1991, they proclaimed their independence. Then they were part of Soviet Union. Not it was not collapsing Soviet Union. It was just normal Soviet Union. And inside Soviet Union, suddenly Lithuania proclaims their independence, and it was absolutely unrealistic, absolutely fantastic. I was just 21 years old and I came to Lithuania to my friends and participated in this revolution. I personally, with these guys, with Lithuanian guys who organized this revolution. And we also not believed till the end that it could be possible, that it could be successful. I remember these first days of Lithuanian independence, and only one country in the world, only one country recognized Lithuania as independent state in 1991. It was Ireland, the only one country, very small, 200,000 people at this time. And in Lithuania, in the main square of Vilnius, there were flags of only two countries, of Lithuania, independent Lithuania, and Ireland. Iceland. And the motto was "Thank you, Ireland," etc., etc. And now this is the most loved country inside Lithuania for this. Yeah, but all the 200 nation in the world did not recognize that. And only one recognized. But in 1 year after these events, all of the United Nations recognized the independence of Lithuania, and all the countries recognized, and also Russian Federation recognized independence of Lithuania. So it is process, yeah, but if it starts, so you can't stop that. It does not depend on the wishes of foreign governments.
Well, we could round up at this point, but Michael, I'm still want to hear your opinion. How did you meet yesterday's news when the Russian drone Giran 2 were bombing Dubai?
Yeah, it was not exactly the Russian drone, but
No, but there was
the Russia.
the
Yeah,
part of a
yeah, yeah,
Russian
yeah,
drone. Yeah,
yeah.
I know,
No,
I know.
but the idea is deeper than
Yeah,
just
yeah,
Russian drone, deeper than when we are speaking about the military industry of Russian Federation and military industry of Iran. They are very, very integrated. And this fact, which you brought now, just one more evidence that these two industries, they are very, very deep integrated industries. I believe that in the United States, in Pentagon, that this was first evidence for them how deep these two industries they are integrated. They believed in America, in Pentagon, they believed that Russia has their own production factories, etc., etc. But Russia is low-tech country. It is difficult to believe, but Russia is low-tech country. They then don't have good world-class universities and world-class scientists. And Iran has that. Iran has world-class scientists and world-class universities.
absolutely.
And Iranian missiles program is more progressive than Russian missiles program. And the same with drones. This is Iran sells drones to Russian Federation, not vice versa. Yeah, this is the principle. And de facto, Iran and Russia has common military industry. This is very important fact. And now then America and Israel bombing Iranian manufacturing of missiles and any other weapon. This is very, very good news for Ukraine and for all the Europe, because the Russia loses this weapon. Not only Iran loses this weapon, but also Russia. Russia couldn't do this weapon itself, only with the help of Iranian scientists, technologists, etc., etc. And in modern war, you should modernize your weapon every day. This is not like World War II. Then you build the tank, and afterwards you build 20,000 tanks like this, don't change any detail. Now it don't work like that. After each attack on Ukraine, for example, Russian make some changes in their missiles and in their drones, and Ukraine do the same. And Russians now they lost a lot of advisors, a lot of engineering basement in Iran. And by the way, they have also very good logistic between Russia and Iran. This is Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea is the inner sea. It is not a part of world ocean. So you don't have any British or American warships inside this Caspian Sea. And you could send, how do you want, from Iran to Russia, any weapon. And only Ukraine from here, from very long distance by Ukrainian drones, we struck with ships a couple of times. Yeah, it happened. But it is very, very difficult to stop this logistic between Iran and Russian Federation.
By the way, have you heard that on a propagandist program by Solovyov, there was an analyst who said just a few days ago that the Ukrainian drones are much more effective, and then he kind of disappeared from every channel in Russia.
This is not first time when this guy disappears,
Okay.
I know, I follow this guy. His name is Kirill. I don't remember exactly the surname.
Yes,
I'm
Kirill.
sorry. But this is a very interesting story because before the war, I spent a lot of years, decade in Latvia. And this guy, he's from Latvia also. And at the beginning of our war, he lived in Latvia and he had a YouTube channel, History of War. And this YouTube channel pretended to be independent channel of History of War. And before the full-scale Russian aggression, his channel was just about historical wars and about current wars, but he was independent. For example, on the Caucasus War between Armenia and Azerbaijan, he was like neutral observer about this war. But when our war started on 2022, this guy started to from this point, he started to be like something about Russian propaganda. Not so open propaganda. He just said that, okay, Ukraine has no chance, etc., etc., etc. And it was during a couple of weeks. And in a couple of weeks, this organization, I don't remember what is the name, Security Council Policy or something like this, police. They arrested him. And he went to the jail in Latvia. And it appeared that he is Russian spy. Yeah. And he was exchanged somehow with Russia by somebody else. I don't know exactly with. And afterwards, he appeared in Solovyov and in Russian TV. So he started his career during this war as a Latvian independent journalist. And he went to the jail. Now he works for Russian propaganda, but also in Russian propaganda he failed, and probably he went to Russian jail this time.
What a career of this man!
Yeah, great career. He's young guy, so this is just starting. Yeah.
Michael, I think this conversation was super insightful for our audience. So at this point, thank you so much. See you next week.
Yeah.
But so far, I wish you good evening. So thank you.
Good evening, Nataliia. Bye.